When the war between Russia and Ukraine began in 2022, most people focused on the images of the conflict, the maps, and the news from the front lines. But while all of this was happening in front of our eyes, something just as powerful was unfolding behind the scenes. A true economic earthquake that hit Russia on a national scale. To understand what happened, we need to imagine the Russian economy as a large system built on three fundamental pillars: energy, exports, and access to global financial markets. And the war struck all three, one after the other. Let's start with the first shock, the immediate one: sanctions. Within weeks, the United States, the European Union, and many other countries imposed an unprecedented package of economic restrictions. Russian banks were cut off from the SWIFT system, foreign assets were frozen, and Western companies began withdrawing from the Russian market en masse. And here something important happens. This is not just a political issue. It is an issue of access to the global economic system. Because when a bank can no longer easily communicate with the rest of the world, the entire flow of international money slows down or stops. At first, the market reacts violently. The ruble collapses. Then it is defended through drastic measures by the Russian central bank, aggressively raising interest rates, implementing capital controls, and requiring certain companies to convert foreign currency. In practice, Russia builds a kind of internal economic barrier to avoid an immediate collapse. And it works, at least in the short term. The economy does not implode as many expected. But avoiding collapse does not mean being healthy. Because while the currency is artificially stabilized, the real economy begins to change shape. The second major blow comes from the energy sector, which is the real engine of Russia. For years, gas and oil sold to Europe represented a massive and stable source of income. With the war, this link is almost completely broken. Europe drastically reduces its dependence on Russian energy, and Moscow suddenly has to redesign its entire export model. And here, an interesting dynamic emerges. Russia does not stop exporting energy, but it changes customers. It begins selling much more to China and India. The problem, however, is that it does not do so under the same conditions as before. In many cases, it has to offer significant discounts to attract new buyers, which means one simple thing: less money per barrel of oil or cubic meter of gas sold. So yes, volumes hold up, but margins shrink. Meanwhile, another part of the economy begins to suffer in a less visible but very deep way: technology. Sanctions block the import of advanced semiconductors, electronic components, and high-precision industrial machinery. And this does not only affect consumer goods, but also strategic sectors such as automotive, aerospace, industrial defense, and advanced manufacturing. Here, something key happens. Russia is forced to replace Western technology with more limited alternatives, often less efficient or more expensive to produce. This does not stop the economy, but it makes it less competitive in the long term. Then there is another effect that is directly felt in people's lives: inflation. In the first months of the conflict, prices rise rapidly, driven by the depreciation of the ruble and the difficulty of importing goods from abroad. Even when the situation partially stabilizes, price levels remain higher than before. And this means one simple thing: household purchasing power decreases. At this point, a fundamental dynamic becomes clear. The Russian economy is not collapsing, but it is being reorganized under pressure. It is like a system that does not break, but changes structure in order to survive. International trade becomes increasingly concentrated among a few partners. Isolation from Western markets reduces economic diversification. And this is a crucial point, because less diversification means more dependence and greater vulnerability over time. Meanwhile, the state increases public spending, especially to support the war effort and maintain internal stability. This creates a particular situation. On one hand, the economy is artificially supported by public spending and energy revenues. On the other hand, pressure on state finances is increasing. So the real question is not, has the Russian economy collapsed? Because the short answer is no. The real question is something else. At what cost is it surviving? Because what we are seeing is an economy that in the short term manages to avoid collapse thanks to extraordinary interventions, still significant energy revenues, and a forced adaptation to new markets. But in the long term, it pays hidden costs. Less access to technology, less global integration, less competition, and a more rigid structure dependent on a few partners. And this is the key point often lost in the debate. Economic sanctions rarely work like a switch that turns an economy off. They work more like constant pressure that slowly changes its shape. Today's Russia is not economically stopped. It is an economy that continues to move, but on different tracks, narrower, more dependent, and less global than before 2022. And the real question for the future is not what is happening now, but how long an economic system can operate under these conditions without losing real growth capacity, innovation, and global competitiveness. Because in the long run, wars are not only measured on the battlefield, they are also measured in balance sheets, supply chains, and a country's ability to remain inside the global economy.